My name is Marcus, and I thought I knew the woman I married. When I discovered what my wife Rebecca had been doing behind my back, I was devastated. But when I tried to tell my family, they called me paranoid and cruel. They defended her, supported her, and made me feel like I was losing my mind. But when the truth finally came out, the real, twisted truth, my family didn't just apologize. They begged for my forgiveness and vowed to never speak to Rebecca again. This is the story of the most disturbing betrayal I've ever experienced, and how my family learned that sometimes the person you think you know best is actually a complete stranger. Rebecca and I had been married for 7 years when everything fell apart. We'd met at a charity fundraiser where she was volunteering, helping disabled children learn to ride horses. She was beautiful, compassionate, and had the biggest heart of anyone I'd ever met. That's what everyone always said about Rebecca, what a good heart she had. She was a pediatric nurse at the children's hospital, working with cancer patients. Kids absolutely loved her. Parents would request her specifically, because she had this amazing ability to make sick children smile, even on their worst days. My family adored Rebecca from the moment I brought her home. My mother would constantly tell me how lucky I was to have found such a caring, selfless woman. My father, who was usually skeptical of everyone, would beam whenever Rebecca was around. My sister Emma would joke that if we ever got divorced, the family would keep Rebecca and get rid of me. Rebecca seemed to genuinely love my family too. She'd spend hours listening to my mother's stories, help my father with his garden, and was always there for family emergencies. When my grandmother was dying, Rebecca took time off work to help care for her. She'd sit by Grandma's bed for hours, reading to her and holding her hand. We didn't have children yet. We'd been trying for 2 years with no success. Rebecca would get emotional about it sometimes, saying how much she wanted to be a mother. She'd watch other families at the park and get this wistful look in her eyes. "I just want to give love to a child so badly," she'd tell me. "I want to make a difference in a little one's life." My family would reassure her constantly. "It'll happen when it's meant to happen," my mom would say. "You're going to be an amazing mother when the time comes." Rebecca also did volunteer work on weekends, reading to kids at the library, helping at the animal shelter, and organizing fundraisers for various charities. She was involved in everything good and wholesome in our community. I was proud to be married to her. People would tell me what a saint I'd married, how Rebecca was too good for this world. I believed them completely. But I was living with a monster, and I had no idea. The changes started about 6 months before I discovered the truth. They were subtle at first. Small things that didn't quite add up, but weren't alarming enough to worry about. Rebecca started working more overtime shifts at the hospital. She'd always been dedicated, but suddenly she was volunteering for extra hours almost every weekend. When I'd suggest we spend time together, she'd say the kids needed her more than ever. "There's a little boy with leukemia who only smiles when I'm there," she'd tell me. "How can I leave him?" She also became very protective of her work laptop and phone. Rebecca had never been secretive about anything. But now she'd close her laptop when I walked into the room and take her phone with her everywhere, even to the shower. When I asked about it, she had reasonable explanations. Patient confidentiality is so strict now, can't risk anyone seeing private medical information. Rebecca also started going out more often with her work friends, grabbing drinks after difficult shifts, attending nursing conferences, going to workshops on weekends. She'd come home exhausted and emotionally drained. We lost a 7-year-old. Today, she'd tell me with tears in her eyes, the team needed to decompress together. How could I argue with that? My wife was dealing with dying children every day. Of course, she needed support from her colleagues. But there were other changes. 2, Rebecca became more interested in our finances, asking detailed questions about my salary, our savings, our investment accounts. She said she wanted to be more involved in planning our future. She also started talking more about adoption. "Maybe we should consider adopting instead of trying to get pregnant," she'd say. "There are so many children who need homes." When I'd suggest we keep trying to have our own child first, she'd get upset. "What does it matter if a child is biologically ours? Love is what makes a family." My family thought Rebecca's interest in adoption showed what a wonderful person she was. "She just wants to help children," my mother would say. Not everyone would be willing to open their heart to a child who isn't their own. Looking back, I should have paid more attention to these changes. But Rebecca was so good at explaining everything, and my family was so supportive of her that I pushed down my concerns. The truth came out on a Saturday morning in April. Rebecca had gone to another nursing conference for the weekend, leaving early Saturday morning and not returning until Sunday evening. I was doing laundry when I found a receipt in the pocket of her jeans. It was from a hotel about an hour outside the city, the same weekend she was supposed to be at her conference downtown. My heart started racing, but I tried to rationalize. Maybe the conference had moved locations. Maybe she'd needed to stay somewhere else for some reason. But something made me look at the receipt more carefully. It was for 2 nights, but it also included charges for room service, meals for 2 people, and expensive champagne. That's when I decided to look through Rebecca's things more thoroughly. In her dresser drawer, hidden under some old nursing uniforms, I found a burner phone. When I turned it on, my world exploded. The phone was full of messages with someone called Daddy Mike. At first I thought she was having an affair, but as I read through the messages, I realized something much worse was happening. Rebecca wasn't just cheating on me, she was selling something that made my blood run cold.
The messages
were about merchandise and special deliveries and private photo sessions. There were discussions about prices, locations, and specific requests from clients. But the most horrifying part was when I realized what the merchandise was: photos, videos of the children in her care at the hospital. Rebecca was taking pictures and videos of sick children, some unconscious, some undressed for medical procedures, and selling them to predators online. I ran to the bathroom and threw up. My wife, the woman everyone thought was a saint, was exploiting dying children for money. But it got worse, much worse. As I continued reading, I found messages about live sessions and private access. Rebecca was arranging for certain people to visit the hospital during her shifts, giving them access to vulnerable children under the guise of being family friends or grief counselors. She was literally selling access to sick children to predators. The money she was making was substantial, thousands of dollars per week. Money she'd been hiding in secret accounts. I sat in my bedroom, holding this phone, realizing I was married to someone who was harming the most vulnerable people in the world. Children who were already suffering and fighting for their lives. I called my sister Emma immediately. I was shaking so badly I could barely speak. "Emma, I need you to come over right now and call Mom and Dad. I've discovered something about Rebecca that I can't even... just please come over." My family arrived an hour later. I showed them what I'd found. I expected them to be as horrified as I was. Instead, they looked at me like I'd lost my mind. "Marcus, honey, you're clearly misunderstanding something," my mother said gently. "Rebecca would never do anything to hurt children. It's literally what she lives for, helping kids. Mom, look at these messages. Look at the photos." My father took the phone and scrolled through some of the messages, frowning. "Son, this doesn't make sense, Rebecca. She's the most caring person we've ever met. There has to be another explanation." My sister was even more skeptical. "Marcus, are you sure this phone actually belongs to Rebecca? Maybe someone planted it in your house? Maybe someone is trying to frame her? It was in her dresser drawer. Someone could have put it there," Emma insisted. "Think about it. If Rebecca was really doing something this terrible, would she be stupid enough to leave evidence in your house?" My family spent the next 2 hours coming up with alternative explanations. Maybe Rebecca was investigating something at the hospital. Maybe she was gathering evidence on someone else. Maybe she was working undercover with police. "You need to talk to Rebecca before you jump to conclusions," my mother said firmly. "Give her a chance to explain. There's no way our Rebecca could do something like this." My father nodded in agreement. "Your mother's right. Rebecca has dedicated her entire life to helping children. She volunteers with disabled kids. She works with cancer patients. She wants to adopt. This is clearly a misunderstanding." Even when I showed them the bank statements I'd found, accounts with hundreds of thousands of dollars that Rebecca had hidden from me, they defended her. "Maybe she was saving money to surprise you," Emma suggested. "Maybe she was planning to adopt and wanted to make sure you could afford it. She's selling photos of sick children." "We don't know that," my mother said sharply. All we know is that you found a phone and some money. Everything else is speculation. My family was so convinced of Rebecca's goodness that they literally couldn't accept what was right in front of them. They made me promise not to do anything rash, not to call the police, and to wait for Rebecca to come home so we could all discuss this together as a family. Against my better judgment, I agreed. When Rebecca came home from her conference on Sunday evening, my entire family was waiting in our living room. I had the burner phone and the bank statements laid out on the coffee table. Rebecca walked in, saw everyone's faces, and immediately knew something was wrong. "What's going on?" she asked, looking genuinely confused and concerned. I held up the phone. "Want to explain this?" Rebecca looked at the phone, and for just a split second, I saw panic flash across her face. But then she composed herself and looked hurt and confused. "I've never seen that phone before in my life. Where did you find it?" "Or dresser drawer." "That's impossible. Someone must have put it there." She turned to my family with tears in her eyes. She can't believe Marcus is accusing me of ... whatever he thinks I've done." She sat down and started crying, the kind of heartbroken sobs that made everyone want to comfort her. "I work so hard to save children's lives," she said through her tears. "I pour my heart and soul into helping families through the worst moments of their lives. And now my own husband thinks I'm some kind of monster." My mother immediately went, "To comfort her, we know you'd never hurt anyone, sweetheart. Marcus is just confused." Rebecca looked at me with such genuine hurt and betrayal that for a moment I almost doubted what I'd seen. "How could you think I would ever harm a child? You know me better than anyone. You know that helping kids is what I live for."
She was.
So convincing, so genuinely emotional that my family rallied around her completely. "Maybe someone at the hospital is trying to frame you," my father suggested. "Maybe someone is jealous of how much the patients love you." Rebecca nodded, wiping her tears. "There have been some issues with a few staff members recently. Maybe someone is trying to get me in trouble." Emma put her arm around Rebecca. "Believe you completely. Marcus is just being paranoid." I felt like I was taking crazy pills. The evidence was right there. But Rebecca's performance was so convincing that my own family was choosing to believe her lies over the proof I'd shown them. Odd, I wasn't done. I had one more piece of evidence that I hadn't shown them yet. What my family didn't know was that I'd already contacted the FBI, not to report. Rebecca, I'd wanted to be sure first, but to ask how I could verify if the evidence I'd found was real. The agent I spoke with, Agent Sarah Martinez, had explained that this type of crime was unfortunately more common than people realized, and that they had sophisticated ways to track digital evidence. I'd sent her screenshots of some of the messages, and she'd called me back within hours. "Mr. Johnson, I need you to bring that phone to our office immediately. What you found appears to be evidence of a serious, ongoing criminal enterprise." But I'd wanted to give Rebecca a chance to explain first. Now, sitting in my living room watching my family comfort the woman who was exploiting sick children, I realized that Rebecca was never going to confess, so I played my final card. "Rebecca," I said quietly, "I've already contacted the FBI." The change in her face was instantaneous. The tears stopped. The hurt expression disappeared. For just a moment, I saw the real Rebecca, cold, calculating, and furious. But she recovered quickly. "You called the FBI on your own wife without even talking to me first?" she said, her voice rising. "How could you be so cruel?" My family was appalled. "Marcus, how could you do that?" My mother gasped. "Should have discussed this with us first. She's exploiting children." "We don't know that," Emma shouted. "You're destroying her reputation over your paranoid suspicions." But 20 minutes later, there was a knock on our door. Agent Martinez had arrived with 2 other agents and a warrant to search our house. Rebecca tried to maintain her innocent act, but the agents weren't buying it. "Ma'am, we've been investigating your online activities for the past several hours since Mr. Johnson contacted us. We have digital evidence that directly links you to multiple federal crimes involving the exploitation of minors." They arrested Rebecca right there in our living room, reading her rights while my family watched in shock as they led her away. In handcuffs, Rebecca finally dropped the act. "This is all your fault, Marcus!" she screamed. "I gave those families hope. I made their children feel special. You'll never understand what I was really doing." The door closed, and my family stood in stunned silence. Over the next few days, the full scope of Rebecca's crimes became clear. The FBI investigation revealed details that made everyone who knew her physically sick. Rebecca had been running her operation for over 3 years. She'd made more than $500,000 selling photos, videos, and access to vulnerable children. Some of her victims were as young as 4 years old. But the worst part was how she'd manipulated the families. Rebecca would target families with children who had terminal diagnoses. She'd befriend the parents, gain their trust, and offer to spend extra time with their dying children. She'd volunteer to stay overnight during difficult treatments, offering to give exhausted parents a break. During those private moments with unconscious or sedated children, she'd take photos and videos that she'd sell to predators online. She'd also convince several families to let her arrange special visits from child life specialists and art therapists, who were actually predators paying for access to sick children. The investigation found that at least 12 children had been directly victimized, with dozens more exploited through photos and videos. One of the most heartbreaking details came from a family whose 6-year-old daughter had died from leukemia. The parents had been so grateful to Rebecca for making their daughter's last days special that they'd named Rebecca as a beneficiary in their will. They'd given her $50,000, thinking she was using it to help other sick children. Rebecca had used that money to expand her operation. When my family learned these details, they were devastated. My mother called me sobbing. I defended her. I actually defended her. I thought you were being cruel, and she was. She was ... double quotes. She couldn't even finish the sentence. My father was equally horrified. I've never been so wrong about someone in my entire life. I'm so sorry, son. I should have believed you immediately. Emma was the most shaken. I hugged her. I comforted her while she was lying about exploiting dying children. I feel like I need to take a shower for the rest of my life. Rebecca's trial was a media sensation. The evidence against her was overwhelming. Digital records, financial transactions, testimony from families, and even recordings of her phone calls with predators. She tried to claim that she was actually protecting the children, that she was gathering evidence to expose predators. But the prosecutors easily proved that she was the one initiating contact with buyers and actively recruiting new victims. Rebecca was sentenced to 35 years in federal prison without the possibility of parole. During the sentencing hearing, several families gave victim impact statements. Parents talked about how Rebecca had betrayed their trust during the most vulnerable moments of their lives. One father said, "She took our faith in humanity and used it as a weapon against our dying child." My family attended every day of the trial. They wanted to understand the full scope of what Rebecca had done, and they wanted to support me publicly after initially doubting me. After the sentencing, my mother stood up in the courtroom and said loudly enough for everyone to hear, "My son tried to tell us the truth, and we didn't listen. We're sorry, Marcus. We're so sorry." The local newspaper ran a story about the case with a quote from my father. "Sometimes the people you think you know best are actually strangers." My son saw the truth when the rest of us were blinded by lies. My family didn't just apologize, they spent months making it up to me. They publicly supported me when some people in the community questioned why I hadn't discovered Rebecca's crimes sooner. They defended me when gossip suggested I must have known something. Emma started volunteering with organizations that help victims of child exploitation, saying she wanted to do something good to balance out the evil she'd unknowingly supported. My parents used the money they'd planned to leave to Rebecca in their will to start a foundation that provides support services to families of hospitalized children with strict background checks and security measures. Today, my relationship with my family is stronger than ever. We learned that blind trust can be dangerous, but we also learned that family bonds can survive even the worst mistakes. Rebecca is serving her sentence in federal prison. She'll be almost 70 when she's eligible for release. Several of the predators she worked with were also arrested and convicted. As for me, I'm still processing everything that happened. I'm in therapy, working through the trauma of discovering I was married to someone capable of such evil. I'm grateful that the truth came out when it did. Every day Rebecca remained free was another day she could have harmed more children. Sometimes the person sleeping next to you is a complete stranger. Sometimes the people you trust most will initially doubt you when you try to tell them the truth. But real family, the kind worth having, will eventually see the light and stand by you when it matters most.